Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and today we're doing my March reading wrap up. Now this is going to be a quick one. I will say I started a lot of books in March, but I didn't finish a lot of books in March. It was not my best completionist month, but I did manage to read a few things here and there. First things first, I just posted a vlog talking about a book that I did finish and a DNF. And the book that I finished in that vlog was Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. That's a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And if you want additional details on the book, this is a contemporary romance, go check out that vlog. Next, I'm going to talk about a couple of rereads, a couple of favorites of mine from when I was a child. Decided to give them a try again as an adult, and it is the Last Apprentice series by Joseph Delaney, and I read the first 2 books in the series. The first one is The Revenge of the Witch, and the second book is The Curse of the Bane. And now this is a middle grade horror fantasy series, and I read these when I was 12 or 13, and I read them as they were coming out. And this is about a 7th son of a 7th son who becomes the apprentice of this man known as the Spook, and it is the Spook's job to go around dealing with all of these supernatural entities in this county that they live in. And so our main character, Thomas Ward, is the new apprentice to this current Spook, and I enjoyed my rereads quite a bit. It was kind of fun to revisit this world after obviously many years. I will say though, the second book, I decided to stop my reread at book 2. I noticed a few things as I was reading book 1 and kind of brushed it aside, and then the problem intensified in book 2, and I'm going to talk about that really quick. This series is a little sexist, just a little bit. The first book talks about, the Spook talks about how you can't trust women, you can't trust girls, always watch out for girls, you know, they're all mysterious and unknowable, and that's a very annoying take to have, especially for a middle grade, probably geared towards young boys, but in general, that's just a very annoying take to have. And I was like, okay, this came out in like 2004, I'll let it slide this one time. And then the second book. Basically, the main characters are in a desperate situation, and the Spook is going to die unless they make a deal, essentially with the devil. And Thomas, our main character, is like, no, I can't make the deal with the devil, but the Spook is going to die. So he's really torn up about this. And instead of Tom making the deal with the devil, a side character does so. And this side character is a girl. Her name is Alice. She is like my favorite character in the series because she's like she's the only female character that is reoccurring and decent and actually fleshed out in this series. And Alice chooses to take the deal with the devil to save the Spook. And the Spook is super ungrateful that she did this, and also like tries to basically trap her because now she's dangerous and she made this deal with the devil, and so he's trying to like contain her and trap her. This really bothers me because it allows our precious boy main character to remain morally pure. He never has to do anything bad for things to be okay in the end. It's always the side characters that have to deal with the negative consequences. And I don't like that. I don't like that the girl has to take the punishment that the main character should take. And it just highlights this like kind of sexist attitude that I was kind of getting from this series, where boys can be pure and they can, you know, do no wrong. It's the girls that can do all the hard stuff. And I didn't like that. So okay, all that to say, those are just some things that bothered me about why I stopped my reread. But I will say these are very entertaining, fast-paced, and spooky reads for middle graders. So, you know, take that as you will. I did give the first book 4 stars and the second book 3 stars because I was so annoyed by that ending. I've gone on and on about a series you're probably not going to read, but let's keep going. The next book I'm going to be talking about is an adult contemporary romance, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I did not like this. I gave this like a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I don't think this is bad. This is a bad book by any means. This is just a type of romance that is not for me. This is about our main character, whose name I have forgotten. You'll have to excuse me, but before the start of the book, her father passes away, and apparently he had a mistress, and he had a second home where he would meet this mistress. And he wills the home for his mistress to his daughter, to our main character. And so she decides to go to this house, and she's going to get it ready to sell. And she's also going to, it's like also a writing retreat. She's an author going away as a writing retreat as well. And so she is dealing with obviously intense grief because her father passed away, and also this betrayal. She had no idea that he had this mistress. And so she's dealing with that, as well as writer's block. And then along comes her next door neighbor. It happens to be her college rival, who also writes a completely opposite genre from her. And basically they decide to genre swap for the summer and see if they can write each other's genres, and of course a romance ensues. And so premise-wise, this sounds kind of fun. I will say though, this isn't a romance for me because I feel that the balance between the romance, capital R, romance, and the grief and the trauma and the exploration of that betrayal was quite high on the grief and the fiction-y elements. I'll say that instead of the romance elements. I like a well-balanced romance between those two elements. Not that you can't have tough topics in a romance. I just think the balance needs to be there, or skewed towards the romantic aspect. I want to see the characters get to know each other, get together, go on dates, have chemistry, you know, longing glances, touching hands, holding hands. Like, I want those to be more prevalent than the grief, all that other stuff. And I feel like this one was too heavy on the serious note. If you like those types of romances, this might be right up your alley. It just was not for me. Last but not least, we will talk about the bulk of my reading for March, and I was able to read the entirety of the first Stormlight Archive book by Brandon Sanderson, The Way of Kings. Now, this is a reread for me. This is the second time I've completed this book. And I'm going to give you more in-depth thoughts about this than I typically do, since I only read 5 books this month. I only completed 5 books this month. This is a 4-star read from me, and I am very confident in my 4-star rating. And let me tell you why this book isn't a 5-star, because you hear people being Brandon Sanderson fans and talking about the Stormlight Archive. They always talk about, oh, the 5-star series. Not to me. This first one is definitely a 4-star. I'm going to give you a summary of what this is about to try and pitch it to you in case you've been on the fence about this series. This is a multi-POV, very epic, long-spanning series by Brandon Sanderson. And we are primarily following 3 main characters, but there are other points of view thrown in as well. And other characters become main characters as the series goes on. Okay, so we're following, in the first book, 3 main characters: Shallan, Dalinar, and Kaladin. Kaladin, and this is Kaladin's book, so we are focusing on Kaladin as the main character in this book, and other characters are the primary main character in subsequent books, if that makes sense. So this is about Kaladin, and Kaladin has a very interesting upbringing. He was trained as an apprentice surgeon to his father, and one thing leads to another. He ends up fighting in the military, and something happens, and then he ends up as a slave, and you're essentially connecting the pieces together between his childhood and what happened to him, and how he ends up in the current predicament that he is as a slave. That's Kaladin's story. Shallan's house is failing. Her father has died and he has a ton of debts. So in order to get out of debt, she decides to travel and become the apprentice scholar to this heretical woman who has a lot of influence. Her name is Yasna Kholin. She is the niece of Dalinar, and Yasna has a magical artifact that Shallan is trying to steal that will hopefully bring riches to her family. Dalinar is receiving visions from what he thinks is his god, and he is grappling with the morality of the war that the Alethi, his people, are pursuing. So those are the characters. Gosh, this book is heavy. I don't want to keep holding it up. Those are the three main characters. We cycle through them. We get lots of other POVs as well. What this first installment primarily is, though, is military fantasy. We spend the majority of this book, I would say, on the Shattered Plains at war with a different group of people following Dalinar and Kaladin. They are both at this location, and we deal heavily with the movement of troops, fighting battles, strategy, and that and I prefer political maneuverings to the movements of armies and that sort of nitty-gritty. And that's what this is. And that's why I give this book 4 stars. That's a long explanation for me to tell you. That's why I don't love this first installment as much. I'm just not a military fantasy girly. But if you are not as well, I still think this series is worth a read, and this first installment is still very good because the focus is still on the characters. I think, as you know, speaking from experience, as someone who doesn't like military fantasy, I think there is still a lot to enjoy in this book. I will say in this first book, it's very obvious that Kaladin is suffering from depression, and there are other topics of mental health discussed in later installments in the series, but they are very well discussed, and I would check the triggers for this. But in Brandon Sanderson, the way that Brandon Sanderson writes his fantasy is it's not very gory or violent. It's not overly descriptive in that way, and there is absolutely no rape that happens anywhere in here, which is lovely to find a series that does not do that, and we appreciate Sanderson for that. Overall, I think this is a great start to a series. It's not a perfect book in my opinion, but it is worth the 1,000 pages. It truly is. Honestly, I will say you have to get past the first 300 pages, and I know that sounds like a lot, because that's usually an entire novel in and of itself, but I actually think if you can push through, you would enjoy this series as well, and this book as well. Especially if you have the audiobook. Alright, those were the 5 books I completed in March, and I was a little bit more detailed with my descriptions because I had fewer books to talk about this month. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Bye!